I think that's I think we've covered much of what I wanted to show you. So
Yeah,
quickly,
cool.
I don't know how much time we've used.
Oh no, we got plenty.
Have we?
Yeah.
So look, I mentioned that I've moved to the stage where I've got enough mature plants that you have to sort of chop it all up and then sort of put it through the compost. I've been through about 4 mulching machines over the years, starting with a Bunnings $99 electric special, which burns out after.
I did that too.
And they're fiddly, you know. You got a hole this big to put the stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, I escalated to this one where you can basically, for smallish stuff, you just pick it up by the armful and you just put it in, and it sucks it through beautifully, and it just does the job. It's quite unusual. Many of these, you have to escalate to a petrol. You know, the electric just doesn't have enough power. And so this one's about it's about 6.5 horsepower, and that gives plenty of oomph. I've got, over in Queensland, because it's tropical there, you get much more sort of dense growth. I've got a 10.5 horsepower one over there, and it just ploughs through everything. Short of going to, you know, the chippy sort of guy where you pay $89,000 for a
beaver
big
service
thing. These, for the home grower, or even if you've just got a couple of acres, you know, these things do a marvellous job. Where they're different to most of the petrol ones at that sort of under 20 grand sort of level, is that many of them have 2 systems. One is they have a blade for chopping up branches, and the other one is they'll have a series of sort of flails, just like a motor mower, which does the sort of the flails aren't necessarily sharp. They're just bashing the thing into bits, and that's the way those things work. So there might be 10 of those things. So when you put something down through here, it just bashes it to bits. You have to have a screen with certain size holes before it can get out. Otherwise, you know, you're throwing out stuff that can be big. And they're usually belt driven. So the belt can start to wear and slip and so on. And then if you've got anything that's wet, it clogs up in the inside because it can't get through. And with this one, this is one of the few ones where everything goes through the blade, right down the bottom, and it chops everything up. So most mulchers, and including the big pros, you know, the truck tree surgeons and so on, they don't like palms because palms are so fibrous, and they just clog everything up. Whereas this one, because everything goes through the blade down the bottom there, it actually chomps them up. So you can put them in, you can put wet stuff in, and so on. Goes brilliantly. What I wanted to show you, just to finish off then, was once you sort of get all this stuff producing for you, and that's a management sort of skill and a commitment too, obviously. You can't just sort of put it in the ground and forget about it. I mentioned you can eat as much as you can fresh, but you can easily, in a 1/4 acre block, you can produce so much stuff that you don't want to waste it. You grew it, you took the trouble to sort of nurture it, and so just running through some of the stuff that these are the ones that I use most of. Just a standard blender. So for example, cherry guavas, figs. Figs, I make a frozen pulp. So you don't want to throw away anything apart from the tiny little stem. And you just chuck them in there, grind it all up, and you've got all the goodies, the skin. Many fruits, most of the antioxidants and so on are all in the surface, the skin layers. So you don't want to peel things or cut that off or lose it. And you don't want to lose the fibre. If you put it through a screen, you lose the fibre. That's the problem with a lot of juices. This one here, you can see what it's got is it's like a sort of a worm drive. And so it's got sort of little teeth and so on. So depending on what you're chewing up, then you get cover. This can either have a series of pores, or else it's a solid one where, depending on what you want to do with what you're putting through. So you put this on here, and you know, you can feed things in. So this one, this is the one I've been using for my cherry guavas. So all of the solid seeds and stuff, the gunk, if you've got little bits of stem and so on, that won't go through the mesh. So that comes out here, and then you have a mesh underneath there, and that's where you get your sort of nice pulp, and then I freeze that up. The next thing is thing that I use a lot is you need a canner. And the ones that are still the best, these were developed generations ago, Fowler's Vacola jars. I've tried lots and lots. These things work. Once you put these through here, 120 degrees for about 15 minutes, provided you've got the interior of the thing up up to sort of boiling point before you take the pressure up. Because if you've got a great big jar, it's going to take longer for the interior to sort of get up to that temperature before you time the autoclaving.
Yep.
And this mix here is a chutney. It's a fruit chutney of this one. You can put all sorts of fruit in, pawpaw and so on, whatever you've got excess of, and then they just last for ages.
Yep.
I can leave that. I don't have to use up fridge space and so on to keep this for as long as I like. The next one, before I go to that, is here's my next stage. So this is where I've only got sort of 2 kilos at a time, or 10 or something. Then I use this, and that's a worm drive.
Yep.
Now over here you can see a bigger model, Mark II, again a worm drive with a sort of a mesh.
An auger
and what it does is all the sort of solid seeds or whatever it is come out here, and the pulp and stuff comes through the mesh, and you collect it in this tray, and then you can put it. For example, these things were designed originally in Europe. And if you've ever seen documentaries on telly where the Italians, they get together, you know, 3 or 4 families, and they do this sort of passata making episode where they've got sort of 15 boxes of tomatoes, and there'll be one person there cutting them, you know, and another person putting them through, and another person steaming them, and so on and so on.
Yep.
And so they designed these machines, and they work beautifully now. And for anything, provided the seeds are small enough to come through here. If you have a seed that's that big, this is not metal. It's not meant to grind up the seed. It's meant to just separate it and to push it out. Then I can put that one through. Now for other things where they're bigger, I have. If you think of with olive presses from Europe. So you've got these great big things, and those ones that you might have seen, or if you've travelled over there, you see these great big sort of vats about this big, and they've got a series of wood slats, and then they might have a big bar, you know, where they sort of push down this platform,
the T-bar,
and just squash the thing. So the seeds and stuff and stems or whatever are left, and all of the oil comes out through these slats and so on.
Yep.
Now the trouble is, I don't produce. I get a lot of olives. I process up bucket loads of them, which last me for the year.
Yeah.
But I don't always have a truckload, and so I kept sort of thinking, how can I sort of do this? And my answer was to have. I've got 3 different sizes, essentially just to think of a colander. So I've got a small one. If I've only got 2 kilos, this one does a bigger lot. You can put through several loads, and then I've got a big one. And what I've got over here is a workshop machine press. So I have a collecting tray underneath here, and I have a series of pistons which I put in here, and then I fill the thing up and I push that down, and then you get to so this has only got a finite travel, you know, it goes about that far. And so then you can see that I can sort of raise and lower this and raise and lower this as I sort of work the thing right down and squash the hell out of it. So that's that. And then lastly, one thing that's absolutely invaluable for all the different fruits that you have, like if you think of kiwi fruit, figs, pawpaw and so on, is drying. And I started off with a little sort of, I think it was a Sunbeam. You see these little plastic things, they're cylinders with about 3 or 4 trays. They have two settings, you know, hot or cold, or 1, 2 or 3 or something. You don't know what the temperature is, and they're a poor design in that they push the hot air down, and then they push then the air sort of turns around and then comes up through all the trees. So the moisture, the water vapour that you've removed from the bottom tray then goes back into the second tray and so on. What you need, well, I've quickly found with the volume of stuff, like for example pawpaws, I produce about 80 kilos a year, that you need a bigger volume and you need a smarter system. And so you go to a semi-commercial sort of level, and you can see here I can put about 15 kilos of cut pawpaw fruit in these, and it's cross flow, so the heating and the fan and so on is the back, and each tray does not send water vapour from that tray over the next and the next and the next and the next. It just comes straight out the front. And secondly, you've got to be able to time the thing, obviously, because you might want to put it on at night and so on. You don't want to ruin everything, and you need to be able to control the temperature. So you need to know what temperature you're putting through. For example, olives, I dry olives, and you need 50 degrees. Whereas most fruit and veggies and so on, 60-64 is probably more the norm. So you need to be able to adjust these things, otherwise you sort of ruin all the vitamins, antioxidants or you never get there. And so these things are just absolutely invaluable, because provided you get the moisture level down to sufficient, it's probably about 5% or something for most fruit, then you put it in I started off with those little mason jars, you know, those ones with the wire sort of lid thing.
Pull over,
and then in the end I finished up getting sort of standard sort of storage containers this big, and you seal it with sort of spray oil, canola spray, with Glad Wrap and so on, and so that you've got sort of, I don't know, from 30 kilos of fruit, you've got all this stuff stored in this great big sort of bin, which you can then sort of draw from for the rest of the year, and use in my chutneys or whatever.
Yep.
Good stuff.
So you honestly, if you're half successful in growing and you're interested enough to sort of put in the time, and you sort of, rather than having 15 different sort of citrus, so you get it all through winter, you've got all this citrus and more than you want, and you're doing out of jackfruits and lychees and all the other interesting things, which if you want one every now and again, it's going to cost you the earth, or you can't even get it. But getting jackfruits here nowadays, I mentioned Mamie sapotes. I mean, the Woolies used to sell them, and some of the sort of more market type sort of
boutique
operation,
stores,
they would have them. But like Woolly, all the supermarkets, they're ruthless. If they don't sort of move, a certain number of product per unit time, they just, it goes. They don't keep it anymore because they want to keep those aisles working flat out. So you just can't get it. And then quite often, of course, you don't know what the variety it is, how long ago it was picked, how much it's been bashed around in the transport, etc., etc.
Right.
And also you don't know about rogue suppliers, where there are laws about sort of pesticides and so on. Most of these guys, they're interested in maximising their commercial profit, and if they think they can get away with sort of not observing a withholding period or something, then you're the poor sucker who buys the thing. It's not going to kill you tomorrow, but you prefer to not have it if you can get out of it.
Right. No, it's all music to my ears. I love this kind of stuff.
So I better stop there.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I don't know how much time we've taken. But
oh no,
we've got plenty.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed that part 2, or I think there might be maybe 4 or 5 parts now. Such a pleasure seeing what Barry's doing here. I hope this has sort of encouraged you guys to get growing a bit of your own stuff. It's up to us. It's up to self-responsibility to get growing our own, good nutritious food. Don't be so reliant on the supermarkets. You can grow the best food you can imagine in your own back garden. Barry's doing it here. If he can do it, we can all do it here in Perth. So cheers, guys. We really hope you enjoyed this, and I'll definitely be back later to film this garden as it evolves. So cheers. Thanks a lot. Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're loving my content so far. It would really help me out a lot if you guys could leave a like just down here, and then we'll move across to this subscribe button. So at your leisure, please tell your friends and family about me. Hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. More content on its way. Peace. Love you guys. Thanks for the support so far. I'm out.